I don't know if you had any thoughts on that, but basically I am curious about more of your adventure in Afghanistan, and I think people must hear this.
Oh, well, I appreciate that, Bap. But you got me thinking that, about that time downrange and what it all meant and what happened. And I tell you, there's things I regret. But one of those now is that if I had it to do all over again, I would have loved to have been on a road march and just kind of got in my own little world and just said, "My name Jamal, my name Jamal, my name Usted." Yes. I think I wish we would have had that then. I would have loved to have been up on a mountain and just been like, "My name Jamal, my name
yes.
Sergeant Finlay, you okay? My name Usted."
Yes, this is good. Yeah, well, they might have put you straight jackets. They might have shown, but they could Guantanamo. They might get Guantanamo. Yeah.
Sergeant Finlay just chimped out on the march.
Yes.
But I guess think about what we were talking about just a moment ago in this, of Haji being caught between a rock and a hard place, but also just the complexity of the us and them and what all they have going on in their own societies. I remember hearing about, I think it was Rory Stewart, who he was like one of these like Brit guys who goes everywhere and does everything. I think he walked across Afghanistan at one point. And I think it might have been Oxford or Harvard or one of these places. They get him to come out, and they wanted to have him talk about Afghanistan. And they're all like, hopped up off of West Wing and all the stuff that they pick up in college, and they're all undergrads and whatnot. And they're going to go out and save the world. And they're going to terraform Afghanistan and make it a nice little liberal democracy. You just know what's going on in their head. Like they're going to go off and be foreign service officers, and they're going to fix it all.
Yes.
And he comes out and he starts talking about tribal politics and the realities of things, and they don't know whether to shit up their back because it's so complex, and it's such a mess that it defies our way of looking at things. And to kind of give you an idea of it. No shit, there I was, Afghanistan. We go into this village one time, and we'd been informed that an NGO had been killed. They'd been, I think it was a woman and maybe her pilot, maybe another person. They'd gone out to this village out in rural Afghanistan.
Wait, what is NGO? Is it non-governmental?
Yeah, that's it. Okay. There was an NGO that was wanting to go build a school. Yes. And it's, again, you go into these places and your initial impulse is at least for me, it's pity or at least compassion. These people are living in a really tough situation, whether fighting the environment or dealing with, their own sort of local tribal realities.
Yeah.
And then us, going through their stuff or whatever. And that's got to be tough to be them, and you want to help them. And so this NGO, presumably, she's this nice lady. She wants to go out and build a school, and everybody's going to, we're going to change Afghanistan and help it out. And, everybody's going to prosper. And they'd gotten killed. I was tasked with walking point into the village. And, we get off the trucks, get in our formation, and I'm walking in, and you look over yonder, and at 12 o'clock, there's this, small helicopter.
Yes.
And it's been, shot up all to hell. There's blood on, little sparse grass, that kind of thing. And, we go, some of the people secure the perimeter, and then, we secure the foothold entrance, and then we begin conducting a search. And I remember thinking that we're never going to find these people. Because we get sort of used to this, the Western way of looking at military, and everybody's got uniforms and flags, and everything is, who the combatants are and who isn't, and this ain't like that at all. It could have been Taliban or Al Qaeda who killed these NGOs. It could have been just some warlord, local chieftains, bandits, or whatever, or it could have been the villagers themselves who knew damn good and well what these people were going to be doing, and they were going to be bringing in Western ideas, trying to basically ultimately destroy that village in the name of saving it. And that's a tough thing to wrap your mind around, because like in the West, especially amongst eggheads, which you probably know this better than I do, just judging from like the literature and everything, how they despise colonialism. and they don't want to impose their will on the poor developing peoples of the world who've been disprivileged and all that. And that's all well and good, but they still want to do that though. They still want to impose their will on them and make them into their image.
Yes.
But they can't stand to actually do that. So they have to do all this what people have called choice architecture, where they want to confront the villagers with a series of choices and options that are sort of prearranged. Like, we want you to do what we want you to do.
It's passive-aggressive colonialism.
Exactly. Yeah. It's like armed kindergarten teachers, it's we want you to do what we want you to do, but we want it to make you feel like it's your idea. And there's something so insidious about that, I think. I would have more respect for somebody who just openly says, like, you do this or I'm going to kill you, rather than like this constant screwing with your mind. But Haji, broke and illiterate and smelly and all that, they knew that intuitively, and they reacted by killing these people. And we never found them. We never found the people that did it. And so it brought to mind, like we were talking about the other day, of George Orwell's essay, Shooting an Elephant, and how he's, I guess, working in Burma at the time, and he came to hate the empire, but then he came to hate the locals too, because they made his job impossible. So he's sort of stuck between these two worlds where he's trying to do the right thing, but on the other hand, he's got these crazy policies from above, but then he's got these people who are resentful below. And you come to see how this compassion can get completely twisted into a kind of selfishness or tyranny. Like one of the boys, Semmelweis, I think is his name. He did that great book on Kerouac. I think is in our circles. He brought out a phrase that I came across with Buddhists called idiot compassion. And if I understand that right, it's that somebody seeks to do something about the suffering in the world, but they do so in an unskillful way that just causes more suffering. Yes. And I think the way we do this, it's completely indicative of this. Like kind of go on a bit of a tangent. David French, I saw recently, was getting all up on his hind legs about R2P, which for those that don't know, it's the right to protect. Apparently a bunch of eggheads after Rwanda got together and decided, never again, we're going to keep this sort of stuff from happening. All regimes, the U.S. builds, or the West have a special responsibility to ensure that these sort of actions never happen again.
Yeah, that Harpy Samantha Power, very big on it. The responsibility to protect, right? She go up to Russia foreign minister, scream at him during Bongo years.
Yeah, and that woman, I swear, God Almighty, these people, Bap, it's like you can't throw a rock at a bush without hitting 3 of these hectoring shitbirds trying to put their pompous bullshit on you. Like all this high-minded stuff sounds really nice in theory, and nobody likes to see the suffering of this stuff. But I guarantee you, once you start putting boots on the ground, you're going to have a butcher's bill. There are going to be children who get JDAMs dropped on them. There's going to be people who get gut shot and go die, in the middle of the dirt. And by the end of it, it's going to look like just another war. And so, it's fine to want to do something about this suffering, but once you start getting involved, it's going to take on a whole life of its own. Because there's an old infantry saying that the best laid plan goes to shit once the first boot hits the ground, and that's the truth. So these David French types, like they completely abuse charity when they get on their soapbox about how we need to do this and that. It's like, pal, the world is filled with suffering, and sometimes it's so much you can barely handle your own, let alone the world's.
Yes, no, and to add to what you're saying, there can be no greater contrast maybe between the mindset of someone like Samantha Power, who is, I think she is married to Cass Sunstein, right? Or sorry, that's Martha Nussbaum. I have these, they're interchangeable, but it's the same part of bureaucrat mediocrity class. And if people want to read, I think it's Michael Ames, who has an essay about the power couple, Nussbaum and Sunstein, and how pathetic essentially is the so-called ruling class. So I call an occupational class. But there can be no greater contrast between the mind of someone like that, filled with the platitudes of people like Ignatieff or the human rights regime ideology, and Haji, as the Afghan who still lives somewhat, maybe not Bronze Age mindset, maybe he lived Iron Age mindset, I don't know. But you got to see firsthand the mind of Haji and how different it is from our own.
A bit, because it's in some ways you would just look at these people sometimes, and you could tell like their mind was running on a completely different path. Another time, we were in our tents, being bored, and we suddenly the door flies open. Platoon sergeant, get your shit, we got to go. So we go, and where are we going, Sarge? What's going on? Shut the fuck up, get on the truck. We'll let you know when you get there. And so eventually we get to this place. And it's way out in the middle of nowhere. And squad leaders go off, they do their huddle, and they come back. Squad leader says, he's like, there's some fucked up shit went down here. There was some pilot bitch flying an A-10, and she opened up on some Taliban Al-Qaeda operative on a motorcycle, and she missed. And she killed, I think it was seven boys, a little girl, a teenager, and a grown man. And so this is a small rural village. So she just took out probably a good chunk of an entire generation of children, or at least of little boys. And so he said, I don't want to hear any sniveling or crying. I want you to reach down, grab your nuts, be a man and do your fucking job. And he told me, Finlay, you got point. And so I had to go walk point into this village where all these kids had just gotten killed. And so I get my boys behind me, and we go walk in. And Bap, I've never experienced the silence like that. You could have heard a pin drop. And you would the place there, one of the things that struck me is everything, it's like Tatooine on Star Wars, how everything's like khaki and like light brown, but the clothing or the rugs or the blankets themselves are really bright, vivid colors, kind of like in defiance of it. And out near the gate of the compound, you would see these bulges. You see all these blankets, and they'd be having these little bulges. And you knew that they had went out and fetched the remains of their children and covered them up with those blankets. And so, and one of the things that struck me is the difference between them and us, and that if it was us, there would be people chimping out and shrieking and crying and making a display of themselves and just, lost in their own mourning, which is understandable. Which if there's a time to break down and cry, that's it, I would imagine. But Haji didn't. Not even the women. There was every eye was dry. They were completely impassive, and almost a dozen people had been killed, and children at that. And they would just stand there, and they would just look at us and watch us. And here we are, I think we had an entire the platoon of us, second platoon, had gone out there. We're all, full battle rattle. We've got night vision, all this other type of stuff. And yet their impassiveness in the face of that was just such a tremendous strength, I thought, that you're dealing with people who are running on a different level than you are. And you can't help but respect that. And so we go on to have to search their houses and stuff like that. And we did find some things. Like one guy had a cardboard cutout of Osama bin Laden, which I thought was kind of funny. But so we go conduct our search, and one of my guys who'd been pulling security at the time while we had been searching, he said that a general had come out, and he got down on his knees in front of like the elders or whatever, and he broke down and cried. And I remember being kind of embarrassed by that. Again, not because it's not appropriate to cry, but like under those circumstances, it just seemed like a display of weakness. Whereas if I was Haji and I'm keeping my shit together in the face of my dead children, and the person in charge of the people who did it wants to come out and make a martyr of themselves, like they need my contrition, I'd be resentful of that. It's like you don't get to act like you're the person who's hurting. But the way that Haji would, it was as if, and again, I don't know what was going on in their head, because the people who could do that that's sterner stuff, Bap. And that it was as though their sorrow belonged to them alone and for their village. It wasn't for us. We'd done enough.
Yes, it's strange. America had chance both in Iraq in a different way and in Afghanistan most of all to come face to face with, you could say, anthropological fact of great significance that not everyone thinks like you. People have different priorities. People have a completely different emotional universe. But none of this gets filtered back to American, forget popular culture. It's not filtered back to academia, certainly, but as far as I know, it's not filtered back to reports that military get, that intelligence community gets. So basically, they just continue on their assumptions that everyone everywhere is the same, and they send you into this horrible scene, like you just say now, on a completely stupid mission, right? I mean, we were talking before about the rule of engagement there, the idiocy, how you were completely paralyzed often or something like this. Do you have stories about that?
Yeah, and to your point, this failure to be able to grapple with these differences in people and this sort of Samantha Powers prioritization of empathy and understanding and all that kind of stuff, and witness my bleeding heart.
Yes.
This winds up inviting aggression. And that's a thing that it's difficult for a lot of Westerners, I think, to come to grips with. That by you not being assertive and aggressive and doing what you have to, this makes you look weak, and people will be resentful of that because nobody wants to submit to somebody they see as weak. There was we were doing a vehicle checkpoint, which this was a ridiculous thing because vehicle checkpoints are sort of like TSA but for cars.
Yes.
And I couldn't tell you how many times I've searched cars or individuals, and I will tell you, like, this is just security theater. And it was Chertoff or whatever, who was like the first person in charge of the Department of Homeland Security. He had shares or whatever in the companies that do the TSA stuff. So that's a whole nother rabbit hole I probably shouldn't go down. But so we were doing this vehicle checkpoint out in the middle of nowhere.
Yes.
And it was just absurd that we were even there. But anyways, one of the things that we'll do is we have to secure a perimeter of 360 degrees around whatever we're at, because that's our first priority, is to protect our we're contesting space. We're struggling for space, as you would say, and so we have to. That's our first priority. And our rules for engagement, at least at the time, were if you're in the midst of a threat, you would shout, you would show your weapon, you would shove, shoot a warning shot, and that sort of thing. There's like an escalation that you would try to follow. And the trouble is there's an entire gradation of things that you can do to display dominance, and Haji would do it. Because we have our perimeter, while we have some people in charge, who are going to be doing the search, but everybody else might be pulling security. Haji would, be like these. A lot of times, kids or young people, they would try to get inside the perimeter, and so these are kids, and so you wouldn't want to hurt them. And so, like, they would get close, and you'd tell them through the interpreter to get back or whatever, and they might get back, or they would act like they didn't know, and so then you'd have to physically push them back. And this would just continue on, and they would just constantly be testing you like that, to where it became kind of a game, and they knew they could get over. And I remember wanting to just like grab a hold of them and zip cuff them just to make an example out of them.
Yes, I remember from when I was a small boy and I had to deal with gypsies in this way. It's true. And you have to just beat the gypsy when they try to play their trick. But it's true. I grew up, anyway, sorry, go on.
No, I done told you once, Jippo, sit your ass down. But yeah, in fact, I remember telling one of our boys, like, you have a tough time imagining them doing this with the Russians. And because like we go there and we're just going to be kind of soft, and the kids make a game of it. And then on top of that, like, we would have to search everybody who came through the perimeter. Even it'd be like a kid on a bicycle. And so the kid, again, makes a game out of it, or he's going to drive through and we get to search him again for like the 20th time that day. Or it got to where they would try to get, at our MREs, or in our rucksacks just to take something. And again, there's that sort of bleeding heart mindset of, well, you should just give it to them or whatever. But that kills their dignity. And that's maybe a whole other line of discussion. But Haji would try to get through. And eventually, and meanwhile, all the old timers, the graybeards, are kind of sitting in the shade watching us. And you just know that they look like, you're thinking like, these are the people who have invaded our country. These weak people. But eventually the Terp just got a gutful of it, and he just started picking up rocks and throwing them because it was just, he was embarrassed at seeing us this impotent, with all of our firearms and all of our training. In the end, Haji has no problem contesting us for space.